Okay, so I apologize for the audio in the last part. It's a complete mystery as to what happened. So I'll just summarize that all of the stations were pretty much international broadcasting, and you're listening to CFRX right here as a local station, and everybody, all the radios picked it up nicely. But one of the things I did was describe the solar sunspot cycle. So the sun has convection of energy from the center to the surface in various convection currents, and those currents include electrons, and the electrons set up a magnetic field. And the second part of it is that the rotation of the sun, approximately a month, takes a month for the whole thing to happen, is not even. The sun is not a solid ball. It's far from it. The center of the sun rotates faster than the poles. So a line, let me do it in blue, a magnetic line begins to distort due to the fact that the center is moving faster, and you see the distortions. You don't actually see it, but you can detect it. And these distortions begin to wrap around the sun like a golf ball without the plastic covering it. It just wraps tighter and tighter around the sun. And as time goes by, there's not much room for these lines, and eventually a kink forms in the magnetic. That's considered that a kink in the magnetic line, and that kink exits the sun in a sunspot. The small dot is the exit, and the entrance is the large dot. They're always in dot pairs. And the number of sunspots gradually increases as the tension of more and more wrappings of the magnetic lines around the sun occur. And these sunspots will last for days or weeks or months, and they're going around the sun with that kink until they either dissipate or wrap into another kink, and things like that happen. So it reaches a maximum number of sunspots until there's just no room for all this, and the magnetic lines break and start reorganizing, and when a line breaks, it breaks inside and outside. The magnetic field begins to break down, and they reorganize, they break, and then it gets to the point where there is a solar magnetic field minimum corresponding with the solar sunspot minimum. And what's actually happening is the poles of the sun are reversing. North goes to south and south goes to north. But there'll be holes in the magnetic field altogether where there's no magnetic field, and that's where the solar wind will exit in a greater fashion. So there's more solar wind out of these magnetic holes that hit the Earth, and that's what's been going on in the past 2 days. We've been having an increase in the solar wind due to a hole that's facing the Earth in the sun's magnetic field. Now, eventually the pole reverses, and the cycle begins again. Now, the convection currents that set up the magnetic field obey the mathematic laws of chaos, which means that the function is strongly dependent on the initial conditions, far more than the function itself. So you can predict the near future much better than you can predict the far future, and as in the convection currents, we don't really measure that. We can only but the magnetic field is a manifestation of that. And the magnetic field buildup is going to obey the laws of chaos. And we can't really predict years in advance of a major solar minimum or maximum, for that matter. We could just draw a line across the history that we've observed. So I'm not convinced that we're going into a mini ice age or a really major minimum. We just have to see what happens, because we're talking about the laws of chaos. So there really wasn't much at the 10 o'clock to speak of, so this is a good summary of it, and I'll see you again at 2 o'clock.